Hi everybody. Welcome to Parent Guilty Conscience, episode 6. This episode, I'm calling it Rescued. Hopefully you have a blessed week, less drama, more positive vibes. Welcome. And I'm happy that all of you are giving me support on this journey. I really do appreciate the emails, the advices you guys have been giving me. Thank you. I'll start this episode with a quote for the day. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so you can know who you are, what you can rise from, how you can still come out of it. This quote is from Maya Angelou. So a little bit about my recap from my previous episode. I told you, as fate would say, I met a good friend here. And we started making arrangement of moving my kids because the issue with my cousin was just too much. So we was doing stuff behind the scenes without my cousin's knowledge. And I didn't want my kids to panic or anything. So remember the neighbor who had helped me before. She was in on it also. So she just waited my cousin when my cousin left because she had been vulgar. My friend's sister had already gone to the house and she was just abusive and all that. She had just gone to check on the kids, but she didn't like that because she thought my kids are going to tell her stuff. But my kids were too afraid and they did not know even my friend's sister also. So my kids were just afraid of her also. So it wasn't much, but I had already discussed with the neighbor also. So the neighbor was like an eye hawk. The neighbor was just watching and she could send us signals. So I decided, and the only thing that I had told my daughter and the neighbor, the only thing I need is the school books, the school bag, school shoes, and school uniform. Those were the only major things that I really wanted. Because the school where my kids used to school, you had to buy those stuff in the school, and sometimes you had to book, and it could take a while. So that's why I was so specific on the school uniforms. So I insisted. So the neighbor went to the house when she had left, packed stuff, helped my kids pack stuff, even though her kids were in there. My cousin's kids were in there. So I did not mind that. So when she packed, my friend's sister had already parked her car outside, and it was just a chap thing. It was just something like, we did not take even more than 5 minutes. So my nephew's child called the mama now. So then the mom decided to come back home. By the time she was there, the car was leaving already. So they got into it with the neighbor. And the neighbor even recorded that incident. And she shared it with me, what really transpired, because it almost got to physical. So my cousin, wanted to go report the neighbor that they had kidnapped my children. So that's when the neighbor intervened and said, the mama to these kids called me, and she's the one who planned for her kids to be out of this house because the way you're treating them. So when my cousin heard that, she rang me and calling me, did you send the neighbor? How did you know about the neighbor? What blah, 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 So I just told her, stop. I'm the one who planned all that, and never dial this number again. Never try and call me again. So she started crying that what did she do, blah, 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 So I just told her, just don't ever dial this number again. Those are the only things I'm telling you. I don't want to talk to you no more. There's nothing to discuss between me and you. And that's how my kids left the house. It was not in good terms. So, and my friend's sister, now like my current kid's auntie, did not even want much. She had heard my kid's story and she was so sympathetic with my children. And she only told me, what I really want is just you cater for the food and the nanny for these children. I have a house and I have everything else. She was a well-established lady, even though she did not have a child of her own. She had already taken care of her nephews and her younger sister. So she she was okay. She was very good. And I am forever grateful because she really made my kids feel loved. The attention my children wanted, she really made it happen. It was just magic. She could take my kids to trips, to dates, to dinners, to movies. It was just the best. So I did not change the kids' school because they had just stayed, they were just in the same school, and because my friend's sister just moved like a 3 mile distance from where my cousin used to live. So the only thing I needed to do was to go to school and change the guardianship. So I had to write an email, and then I wrote a letter and I scanned it to the school, and I scanned it to my kids, now auntie now. I scanned it to her, and she had to go represent it to the school. And I had to change telephone numbers. Just the basic stuff. I had to call to talk to the driver, the school driver, where to pick and drop the children. I had to give them all the details. So, and life began for my children now. This was a new place. My son was happy. I had never seen my son this happy. But unfortunately, I decided to take my daughter to a boarding school because she was growing up, and I thought boarding would be best for her. So basically, my friend's sister was just to take care of my son only. So the only thing that remained was just to focus ahead. My kids, when they left my cousin's house, they had no clothes, like home clothes, like casual clothes. They only came out with what they was wearing and their uniform. So I had to buy stuff again. So I was buying clothes. I had to buy a chunk of clothes. I used a lot of money to get them clothes because they had nothing from their inner pants, from name it, everything. So I had to buy everything for them because I decided to leave everything for my cousin, name it, from the furniture, from the electronics, from beddings. I didn't take nothing. I just said, it's okay. I gave her with a good heart and I won't take them back. So life started. My kids were calm. They opened up. They started opening up. They was talking. It was a good attention. I think this attention and treatment they needed for quite a while, So, but my heart was not still settled. It was okay, but like they say, good things don't last. Maybe I fear things going wrong so much that I preempt them by not getting too excited about them. When things appear to be going on well, there is no light without darkness. This happy journey lasted 3 months because my friend's sister decided to relocate back unexpectedly. And that's why I spent an insane amount of time wondering if I'm doing it right. And so at some point, I just remind myself that I'm doing my best, and that's enough. I'm not perfect, and that's okay. I did not settle or calm down so much because I was just worried because this was just a temporary thing. It just lasted just a few months, like it was just 2 months. 3rd month, my friend's sister decided to relocate back. It was so unexpected. And this left me stranded. I was really heartbroken. The love, my kids, my son had added weight. He's a chubby kid, Everything was going on well. It was perfect. I was relaxed and a bit, and I had to take my kid. I had to take like all that again. Everything started flooding back when my friend's sister relocated unexpectedly. I was confused again. I'm like, why? Why all this? So when my friend's sister relocated, the younger sister, you remember I told you she had a younger sister, had to take my kids to their father's house. So they moved in with them. And my daughter now was in boarding school, so it was only my son and the nanny and the younger sister, and now their granddaddy there, my friend's daddy now. So we had a nanny, but this nanny, I did not get to know her really well because I rarely even talked to her on phone. I never looked for her. My friend's sister is the one who looked for her. So she didn't stay for long. And eventually, boom, just all of a sudden, she left. She left, and I didn't know what was really going on. It was just suddenly. I was shocked. Everything was going on well. So my friend's younger sister started taking care of my son. But remember, she was going to college. So she could not be there all the time because my son used to go in school in the morning. She used to be picked by the school bus and then dropped back by the school bus. So sometimes she never used to be home while my son was being dropped. So there was a day, I have a vague memory about this day because this is when things turned south. My son was left in school. Nobody picked him up from school because I think they was closing school or something. So my son wasn't picked from school. And the younger sister to my friend never went to pick my son from school. Something like that. And the teacher called, and I think the younger sister decided to call a family friend of theirs who happened to know my baby daddy. So when he was called, he went to school and picked my son. So when he picked my son from school, he decided to call my baby daddy that your kids are just being thrown all over. Nobody's taking care of these kids. This child is suffering here, So I was shocked when my baby daddy just called me out of the blue because we had a gap. We had not been communicating. So he just called me telling me that my child is at his house. It's at a friend's house. I was like, I don't know what's really happening, but let me sort this issue out. So I called a friend of mine, and this friend of mine called a friend of hers. It was just like there was a little bit of confusion there. So my friend called a friend, and the friend rushed to that house because I just said, I just need the house number and this will be sorted out. So my friend sent her friend, because her friend lived in the neighborhood, went, picked my child, and then I told my friend to organize to go pick my child's stuff from that house and just take my son in. So she went, and this other friend had already gone and picked the child and took the child to her house. And then my friend went, picked my kid's clothes where he used to stay, and then went over her friend's house. It's a little bit confusing. Then now my friend picked my son from her friend's house, and she left with my son. So because my friend had issues with her husband at that particular moment, she could not take in my child. She had like a little bit of family issues. So there was no room for my child at this particular moment. So I had to swallow the bitter pill and take my son back to my brother's house. My brother used to live in my dad's house. So I had to take my son back there because my son was homeless at this particular moment. Literally, my child was homeless. So I had no one else to call at this particular time. So my son was taken back to my brother's house. The only person I called my brother and told my brother, my friend is bringing my child there. So I didn't tell my brother nothing else. So my friend went with a suitcase, my son's clothes, and there she dropped my child there. So before they en route, I told my friend to buy my son a phone. So I sent her money. She bought my son a phone and then put a number. And then my son had to miss school for 1 week. There was nobody to take care of him and organize him, prepare him in the morning to go to school. And my brother was there, and the wife and my nephews. They was just there. So my son had to miss school for 1 week. So my son, within this period of 1 week, my son only fed on yogurt and cake. Because he used to go to the shop. Remember my previous episodes, the shop that was on my neighbors. So that's where my son used to go and pick this stuff to eat. So that was his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yogurt and cake. He could take some other stuff. So that was it. So I decided, if you guys can remember also, if you've been listening to my story on my previous episode, remember the nanny who abandoned my child at a friend's house. This son of mine was abandoned by my nanny. I had to call her. I decided to call her because I needed somebody who could care for my kid, my son. So when I called her, her phone wasn't going through. So I still had her mama's number. So I called the mama. So the mom picked. Thank God she picked. So I asked her about the daughter. And then she said, yeah, she's just here in the village. But one thing, she has a child now. The child is young. She's a year old, 1 year and some few months. And she was married, but she came back. The marriage did not work. So I asked the mama, can I talk to her because I want to ask her something? So the mom said, yeah. Then she gave her the phone and I asked her if she was willing to come back and work for me. She cried and told me, can you take me back after I wronged you? I said, yes, I can take you back because you was not a bad person. Something just happened and there was just a misunderstanding and we can talk about this. Remember, you guys, I was kind of desperate, and that's the wrong thing to do when you're desperate, But I needed somebody first. I didn't know anybody. Nobody was willing to help me, like, look for a nanny. I just said, let me go back to the person I know. Better the devil you know that you'd rather take somebody that you know. So I decided to call her back. And when I talked to her, she agreed. She agreed and she told me to give her like 3-4 days to get ready. So I told her, okay, then I'm sending you money, you travel. Then she told me there's one thing she needs to tell me. I have a child, and if you're willing to employ me with this child, I travel with my child. Guys, I had no choice. And she's a mother too. She has other kids. She had like 3 other children, but this was younger. The other ones were older. So she told me, I want to come to work for you, yes, but I have to come with this child. My mama is old and she's sickly. And I cannot leave this child with her. Any job that I get right now, I have to just ask if you're willing to take me with my child. And I agreed. And the journey started. After like 4 or 5 days, she came. And so at least my son had someone he knew well, At this time, my daughter was still in boarding school. But she used to call me, and the teacher also used to call me that my daughter is not okay. She's so quiet. It's like something is disturbing her in school. So you remember now, at least my son has somebody taking care of him. So in school, I used to call every day, like after every 2 days in the evening, I talked to my daughter. But she wasn't doing well in boarding school. And the reason even I took her was just to at least ease, like, the stress that she had. I wanted her to concentrate, but my son was still younger. I did not want to take him to a boarding school. So my daughter told me she doesn't want to stay in the school and she doesn't like the boarding school. And she said she has that feeling, she misses the brother. There was a few issues also going on in school. And so I talked to the teacher, my daughter's concerns, but the teacher just told me if the child cannot concentrate, there's no need of keeping your child here. So I decided to resort to the friend of mine who went and picked my son from the friend's house. So she told me there's a school she can help me get. So And she helped me. My daughter left that school, and she went for an interview together with my son. So they did an interview, and they passed, and they started going to that school. So, and the journey started, and they started a new school. I paid the school fees and everything, and she joined that school, and they were a little bit closer. I was paying the school bus and doing everything. But my nanny had this young child. So she used to be so focused to her child than looking after my children. So because I needed her and she needed the job, I asked her if she has somebody else. I wanted to employ 2 nannies. So I wanted one nanny to check on my daughter and one nanny to check on my son. So she told me her sister is still in the village and she would love if I would employ her also. So I talked to the sister. The sister said, yeah, she's ready, and I sent some bus fare. Within a day, she was in Nairobi. So they started work. So the sister was taking care of my daughter, and my nanny was taking care of my son. So there were 2 nannies taking care of these 2 kids. Every nanny had her own child to take care of. So I wanted that focus, that concentration, that attention to my children right now. And now I had become tough, I had become tough now. So they all lived at my brother's house. That's my dad's house, but my brother was living there currently. And my dad's house has an extension. So my brother was living in the front extension, but we was living in the back extension. So I bought my own stuff, from the refrigerators to the freezers to the televisions to everything. I used to buy my own food. I separated my stuff completely from my brother and the wife. I had no communication, no whatsoever with them. Like, my nannies were now my eyes, my hawk eyes. They were taking care of my kids. So I had nothing dealing with my brother's family. So, but remember, my nephews, my nieces were there also, my brother's kids. So they were all there, but at least now I could concentrate. I had nannies who was taking care of my children. So all was well. But still there was issues, because where they used to do laundry, it was one place. So there was just conflict still with my brother's wife, So there was just conflict. My brother's wife used to just look for something, just something petty, and then turn it out to be something big. So me, this time round, I used to be so tough, and I used to ignore all this. I said, no, not again. I will not stand this BS. I will not stand them now. So I was kind of now tougher, the way I just told you. So everything was so separated. So my brother's wife tried. She had a shop there. Everything was going smoothly. My kids were okay. All was well with me. So I wasn't worried. I wasn't stressed, but there was still issues that we was just shoving them under the rugs, under the carpets. I did not want to even bring no more issues. But it reached a point, my brother was just too much. Alcohol, and then him and the wife arguing. But I just used to ignore. So when the wife started now again attacking my nannies all the time, attacking the nannies, just talking, I don't know how I can put this. And then my nannies did not know her very well, but my other nanny, the older nanny, knew how she is. And I had talked to my nanny. They should not let her get in under their skin. But they still did. So they started arguing. There was fights in the house now. Now there are 3 older women in the house. So there was fights, back and forth. It was too much, and then it started affecting my children again. So what I decided, and my nannies now also, there was fighting back. So my nannies also were not keeping quiet. They were not keeping quiet. They decided to fight. They decided to fight completely and stand their ground and said they're going to take care of these kids, and they're not moving, they're not doing anything, because that's what my brother's wife wanted. Me, my thing was, I just wanted peace of mind. I really needed that peace. I wanted my kids to be in a peaceful environment. My kids were growing. They were growing. They had seen it all at a very young age. Y'all, if you like my show, please consider leaving a review. This helps my podcast grow. Then hit the follow button. And if you have questions, send me an email on achoch@gmail.com. Or if you want your story to be shared anonymously, or you want to join me on my show, contact me on my email. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate you for tuning in and taking time to listen to my story. Please share, follow wherever you're listening at. Any podcast from iHeart, from Spotify, from Spreaker, from Google, and from Apple Podcast. Coming up on my next episode, I had a slight issue recording my daughter on this episode, but it will be on my episode 6, part 2. That's where you'll hear my daughter. After that, I will record my 7th episode, where my nannies really, really, really fight to take care of my children. Thank you, and have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. Bye-bye, y'all.